The regular meeting of the Guam Public Utilities Commission. It's March 28, 2024, 6:35 p.m. All commissioners are present this evening. First order of business is approval of minutes of the February 29, 2024 meeting. I have a motion. The approval minutes subject to technical correction. Thank you, Mike. Second. Joe seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. First order of business this evening is GWA docket 1908, petition to approve a new rate design structure. We have a Concentric Energy Advisors report, an ALJ report, and a proposed order. Fred.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I have to repeat this. Item of our progress today.
Thank you, Mr. Pangolina. Mr. Pangolina is recused from this matter. Go ahead, Fred.
All right. Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. First of all, in this matter, we have with us our consultant from Concentric Energy Advisors. That's Vicky Ramal, and he's been working hard on the rate design issues. He prepared the report that is submitted as part of your packets. I think you have his report and also the ALJ report. Colleen, is he able to hear us? Is he online?
Yeah, he can hear you.
Good morning. Good evening.
Good morning for you and good evening for us.
That's right. Good evening.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with just a brief explanation of all the changes that the rate design will make. But I should say a couple of things. Rate design involves the structure of the rates for the water system. And usually in rate design, you have signals that the utility wants to give to the customers to affect consumption in one way or the other. There's other elements of rate design. For example, in our rate design, there's a presumption that residential ratepayers are subsidized by the other classes, commercial, hotel, and government. There's also a principle of rate design based on cost of service. And in recent years, the utilities, and this has been the case with GPA, for example, the PUC has viewed favorably moving towards cost of service. That is, ratepayers should pay the cost of the service that they get. Now, we still have, however, the presumption that residential ratepayers will be subsidized. And in fact, in the rate design that GWA has proposed, that's still the case. What GWA is attempting to do is to resolve some of the imbalance that currently exists between water rates and wastewater rates. At present, the water rates actually subsidize wastewater. So there's an over-recovery of over 6% with the water rates to subsidize the wastewater. And the wastewater under-recovers, according to the CEA report, by about 15%. So there's really an effort here to change this imbalance. There's a shift of about $2 million from the water rates to the wastewater rates among all classes. But a couple of things to explain. All you're being asked to do this evening is to approve the rate design structure. Now, what you have in the reports, the CEA report and the AFJ report, is based on 2024 rates. We had required GWA to show us with the rate design how would it affect the existing 2024 rates. However, understand the rates are not, these rate design principles are not going to go into effect if you approve them tonight. They will not be put into the existing 2024 rates. They will not be a part of the 2025 rates. And at the very earliest, they will not be included until the 2026 rates. However, if you approve tonight, what will happen down the road is that when the PUC approves 2025 and 2026 rates, we will then ask GWA to plug these new rates here, they become effective. So then you'll have an opportunity again to review the impact of those rate design principles on the year in which they are implemented. So they're not being implemented tonight and won't be for a while. That's at GWA's request. They, at first, were considering putting them into the 2025 rates. However, they decided not to. And they have requested that they not be included in the rates until 2026. So I just wanted to fairly quickly go over what the changes involved are, because rate design is, in my mind, one of the harder aspects of rate making. I know I've had to read through these matters a number of times to be able to understand what the changes are. The current water rate base charge structure is basically unchanged. There's really not a whole lot of change in the water rate except for the implementation of a 3-tier system rather than a 2-tier. The proposed rate design does not alter the current monthly base charges for water, which are based upon meter size for all rate classes. The current base charge for all classes of ratepayers are dependent upon their meter sizes, which range from 3/4 inch to 12 inch. The current monthly base charges by meter size are equal across all rate classes, except for agriculture. Now, the biggest change in the residential rates is the replacement of the 2-tier volumetric charge system with a 3-tier volumetric charge system for the water rate structure for residential customers. At present, there's a 2-tier system. Monthly usage under 5 kgals is billed at $3.51 per kgal. Usage over 5 kgals is billed at $14.58 per kgal. GWA proposes to add an additional block to the tier system and change the break points associated with the blocks. Under the proposed 3-tier system, monthly usage at or under 3 kgals would be billed at $3.50 per kgal. Monthly usage between 3 kgals to 10 kgals will be billed at $7.50 instead of the $14.58 at present to consumption over 5 kgals. Usage over 10 kgals will be billed at $15 per kgal. Finally, on the water side, there's an increase in the water volumetric charge for commercial classes. And remember, that's under the 2024 rates, not necessarily what they might ultimately be. But the flat fee for volumetric charge is increased from $18.12 for all kgals to a flat fee of $18.49 for all kgals. Now, it's the wastewater rate structure that really has the substantial changes. There's a change in the residential monthly base charges from a fixed fee to one based upon meter size. So right now for residential customers, there's a fixed monthly base charge for wastewater irrespective of meter size. All residential customers, whether their meter size is 3/4 inch or 12 inches, pay a monthly wastewater base charge of $32.14. Excuse me. DWA is proposing to establish a fixed monthly base charge for residential customers based upon the size of the meter as opposed to the current fixed charge irrespective of meter size. Under GWA's proposal, fixed monthly wastewater base charges for the residential class will change from the current universal charge, $32.14, regardless of meter size, to a charge based upon meter size. Residents having meters 3/4 inch up to 2 inch will pay monthly charges of $12 to $27.99, all less than the current monthly charge of $32 a quarter. For residential ratepayers with meter size from 3 inch up to 12 inch, they'll pay between $49.99 to $309.85. So what the rate design principle here does is to place cost upon ratepayers that use more water, that have the bigger meter size. So that in rate making principles is supportable because those that use more water should pay for it. In addition, under wastewater charges for the non-residential classes, there will be an implementation of a fixed monthly base charge. Right now, there's only a volumetric charge for the non-residential classes. They're not charged any fixed base monthly charge. Under GWA's proposal, non-residential classes, commercial, hotels, and government will pay the same monthly wastewater base charges as residential customers based upon their meter size. For the first time, non-residential classes of customers would have a monthly wastewater base charge in addition to the volumetric charge. Additionally, there will be an implementation of volumetric wastewater charges for residential customers and a slight increase in the volumetric wastewater charge for non-residential customers. Residential wastewater customers do not presently have a wastewater volumetric charge. For the residential class, a volumetric charge of $4.75 per kcal would be introduced. The monthly volumetric charge for wastewater rates will be slightly increased for all commercial, hotel, and government classes. For example, for commercial one, the current rate of $9.99 be increased to $10.31 per kcal. For hotels, the volumetric rate would be increased $24.34 to $25.13 per kcal. And the government volumetric rate would be increased from $14.28 up to $14.74 per kcal. Now, again, remember, those are all the increases under the current would be if it were implemented for the 2024 rates. But the reason EUC needs to defer implementation is to first determine what rate year the changes will be applied to, and then have an opportunity to determine what the rate impact will be. So that's all I wanted to present at the other time. There are issues about rate impact, and I thought at this point I would turn it over to Vicki and give you commissioners an opportunity to ask questions about rate impact and what changes will be brought. And I can certainly add more later if you want me to. I wanted to get that background out.
Thank you, Greg. Go ahead, Vicki. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I believe that was a very good summary. So, I mean, I don't necessarily have too much to add beyond what Fred just said, but I'm here to answer any questions that commissioners might have, or if there are certain areas that you'd like me to expand on, please let me know.
Who do you want to call? Yeah. Comments? Been wanting to see this for a long time now.
We have.
And here we are.
The commissioners may recall, we included an analytical study on rate design and affordability as part of the comprehensive review and update for the last 5-year rate case. It was part of the stipulation that was agreed upon between Georgetown and GWA. So the analytical study proposed this rate design structure in order to give GWA more flexibility to increase the possibility of making future rate increases more cost of service aligned. It gives us a little more flexibility with adjusting the different tiers in the 3-tier declining block structure to give us a way to address affordability issues as we move forward with our capital improvement program. And that was kind of the goal when we asked for it as part of the comprehensive review and update. At that time, although we did prepare it, the analytical study was provided to the PUC's rate consultants when we adjudicated that process. The ALJ report mentions that there was apparently no consensus reached, and I think we did have technical sessions where we discussed it, and of course it was subject to discovery by the prior consultants, and they didn't have a whole lot of questions, and when we presented it, they seemed not to be opposed to it, but at the end of the day, when all these analytical studies were taken into effect for adjudicating the second phase of the 5-year rate plan, their position was no rate increases were needed, so why would you change the structure? And we, of course, thought rate increases were needed, and the changes in the structure would allow us to move towards more cost of service based rates where it was appropriate to do so, continue some of the interclass subsidies in accordance with policies that have been established by the PUC and the CCU for residential, to the benefit of residential customers, but then also mitigate rate increases that would be required in the future. And so we still think it's a good idea. We still would ask for the PUC's approval of this. As Fred mentioned, it's not going to be incorporated into either this year or fiscal year 25. We were hoping that if the PUC had acted on it previously, when we presented the new 5-year rate plan, we could have incorporated it at that time, but because of the timing of it, we're not ready. We needed to get the 5-year rate plan done, and so we didn't include it for 2025. And what we've given you in the draft filing is just straight proposed rate increases without consideration of the rate design structure. However, if you approve the structure tonight, then the earliest we could utilize it and present proposed rate increases using the new rate structure would be if we true up when we true up in 2026, and that aligns with what the ALJ has presented. So we think it was fairly straightforward. I would point out for the numbers that are in the ALJ report with respect to what would change. What we did was we have the revenue requirement for fiscal year 2024 that was approved, and we just kind of took that revenue requirement and distributed it based on the proposed rate design structure in order to arrive at the same amount. But moving forward, as if it's approved and we are going to implement it in the true-up for 2026, the numbers won't come out necessarily the same way that they've been presented here. The structure itself would be, and we think it's important on the residential wastewater side to add that base charge scaled to your meter size the same way the water-based charges are, and also to provide a volumetric charge for residential wastewater. One of the things that we probably reported to you in the prior rate case during the pandemic was when everything shut down and everybody stayed home, we saw a market increase in consumption on the water side, and therefore for the residential class, and then accordingly the interaction overall was very professional, and we're appreciative of that. I think that it has had a good vetting with this go around, and we're hoping that the board recognizes that, and the commission recognizes that, and will approve.
Thanks, Miguel. Do the commissioners have any questions regarding this rate design? Barb?
Yes. I'll turn to page 12 of consensus report. And I guess my biggest concern overall is in this rate design is the tiering, okay? When in the residential, when you go from tier 1, from 2 tiers to 3 tiers, and you lower the tier, because, right now it's 5,000 gallons and below versus now you change it to 3 K gallons and below. And where I'm concerned about is customers consuming between 3 K gallons and 5 K gallons will see a bill increase. And so my question to you is, because I pulled out my bill, and right now, and I don't think I'm a typical household, because we're just 2 empty nesters, okay, and my dog, and occasionally watering the grass. So my bill in January was 2,400 or 2,443. So right now I'm below that, but occasionally. So my first question is, did you do an analysis as to how many customers are in that would be affected? Because I know my bill has gone over 3,000 because, especially when I water blast or, when I clean around the house and I water. But on average, a 2-person household, how common is that? So the question really is between that break between 3,000 to 5,000, approximately how many customers do you have in that category? Did you do an analysis on that? In other words, how many people, because they're in that 3 to 5, are going to see their bills increase because of this? Is my question.
So an analysis of the typical bills and consumption and the number of accounts that have that consumption was part of the rate design work, and it's in the analytical study. To answer your part of it, I assume is a question of how many customers. I think we
are going to be affected. Because they are in between 3 and 5. And
I think on the residential rate class, over 50% of our customers use less than 5,000. Around 50% of our customers use less than 5,000.
But the rate is at 3,000.
Right, and so the instance, the selection of the break point at 3,000 gallons was not necessarily a function of how many customers would be affected by it, but for a typical household, what is the minimum for basic sanitation and health, and that was based on kind of a national analysis on affordability and establishing that 3K house. So that's the rationale behind the 3K rate. It isn't necessarily how many customers are affected. It's what would a typical household need to meet minimum health and sanitation requirements.
You still haven't answered my question. How many customers are going to be affected who are between that 3 and 5 bracket? That's my question.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that, but I can get it.
And then the other concern that I have, is the more you consume, the less it's going to cost. Because in paragraph 3 of the report says, customers consuming above 6 K gallons and less than K gallons will generally see a bill reduction, which to me again, they're gonna see a bill reduction, whereas those of us between 3 and 5 are gonna see a bill increase. You know, that to me, logically, is not,
And it's not that way. The more you use, the more you pay. That is,
that's what it doesn't
no, I
say here in this
think
report.
in the report, it's referring to, compared to the old bill structure, where if you're between 3 and 6, 6 and 10 kcal,
Yeah,
under the old structure, you're paying $14 per 1,000 gallon. Under the new structure, you're paying less than that for that range of consumption. And so if you're in that range, your cost per kcal is going to decrease. But in terms of your overall consumption, the more you use, the more you pay. That's still true.
yeah, but if they're still within that range, 6 to 10, as the report says, they will generally see a bill reduction. Because if you maintain that and the cost drops from 14 to 7, you will see your bill being reduced.
And that was,
And that's where you're gonna see, I think, the most of your residential customers.
no, I think most of our residential, more than half of our residential customers are below the 5 kcal mark.
I'm sorry?
I think about half of our customers are below the 5 kcal mark.
And if they're gonna, more than half of your customers are below the 5 kcal, so the vast majority of them are gonna see an increase if they're over 3 but under 5.
Well, it depends, because you can be under 5 kcal and still be under 3, and then you won't see it increase. I won't
But
see it
under the
increase.
new structure, above 3 kcal,
It's
you're
only-
going to see an increase, because that's what it says. 3 to 5 will see a bill increase. Am I reading this correctly? Customers consuming between 3 kcal and 5 kcal will see a bill increase.
Only on water. You have to look at the combined impact. So if you look at table 6, that Concentric Energy Advisors prepared at page 11, it talks about usage. And then if you look between 3.3 kgals and 4.9, when you take both, true, there's an increase in the water bill, but when you take the total water and wastewater, there's a decrease for those classes of from 7% to 2%. That's between 3.3 and 4.9. So the combined factor is a reduction.
And if I may add, sorry, we're having a little bit of difficulty hearing, so I should have jumped in a little bit earlier. To your question, in terms of, Fred is pointing you to the right table, table 6, also because we looked at the bill impact at the customer level, customer by customer. So table 6 will also indicate you, because we've listed the percentile within 10% where customers fall. So back to your first question, generally that table indicates where the customers fall. So basically you can see from that table, like 30% of the customers who are combined water wastewater are using on average about 3.3 kgals. And then about 50% are using 4.9. So to your question, between 3 and 5 would be somewhere around 20% of your customers. And so that's first part of your question, but back to the table on a combined bill basis, if you look at table 6 all the way to the column, the rightmost column, you'll see generally even in that usage threshold, the second tier are the people who now will be in second tier versus when they used to be in tier 1 in the earlier rate design. There's still a rate reduction. Bill impact is negative on a combined bill basis when you look at it from water and wastewater combined.
So in answer to your question, about 30% of the customers are in that range between 3 and 5,000 kgals. And in that group, on the combined bill, their bills would drop anywhere between 2 to 7%. Their water section would go up, that's true. But on the combined bill, it would go down. But the other thing to remember is what we're looking at now is just an example at this present time. We don't know specifically what it's going to be 2 years down the road. We'll take another look at it then. You see, Doris, what we're saying here?
That's clear as mud. I'm a little bit slow. Go ahead.
So
You can help enlighten me.
I just have,
Go ahead.
so then in the 60% percentile, those use 5.8 right gallons. They're the ones that are going to feel the impact the most because we have the water and wastewater at 5% combined. Yeah, so it's going to go up, right? It's going to go up. Am I reading this right? So that's that group, they said that will feel the impact as well as the commercial will feel the impact, right, with the wastewater. There were two areas, if I read this correctly, that would feel the impact.
There's a decline or a combined decrease for everybody, except for the 5.8 and 8.6. So, but just to be clear though, on
You're right.
table 2, on the tier 1, 2, 3, since we're on is this kind of a step tier? So the first 3,000 gallons is billed at $3.50. Then the 3 to 10 is billed at $7.50, and then above that is billed at $15. Or is it if you fall under the 15, 10 and over, you're automatically billed $15 from gallon 1? It's a step. It's a tier thing. So,
I like your question.
yeah. So
You're saying,
you don't.
if you're at that tier,
Yeah.
is the whole thing?
No, it's not. It's supposed to be step.
Or is it tiered, like the way the tax guy is?
Correct, that's what I'm asking. Is it, so the first 3,000 gallons is billed at $3.50, and then tier 2, 3 to 10 gets billed at $7.50 on the proposed rates, right? So if I use 10,000, or if I use 6,000, most of my bill will be at the $3.50, $7.50 rate, and then that one, the last 1,000 will be at $15.
About 10,000.
Right, if I'm using 11,000, for example, right? Okay. So,
But if you're above 10,000, it's still, well, you're above 10,000, you're only paying $15 per kgal for the kgals above 10,000.
so for tonight's discussion, Fred, you mentioned something about, since this is going into 2026, billing, the commission will have a chance to review some kind of mocked rate structure, using this rate structure based on 2025 usage, so they can see what the impact is, rather than based on 2026.
It'll be based on 2026.
2026, like first half, first quarter.
In the true-up proceeding.
In the true-up proceeding, so the mock part is what you're looking at now. So the rate increase that you gave us for 2024,
Right.
the total revenue requirement based on that rate increase that we projected, that number was taken and then backed into the rate design structure just to provide a basis for the difference between the current 2024 rate structure and if we were to achieve the same revenue requirement using the rate design structure that we proposed, right? So this is the mock-up. Well, if you approve the rate structure, all you're doing is approving the structural changes to the base rate on the wastewater side being flat rate for residential to being a base rate scaled to your meter size and then adding a volumetric rate. And then on the water side, adding the additional tier to the volumetric charge.
So in 2026, if we do a comparison, we see some kind of impact.
It'll be based on what we project our revenue requirement is for 2026, and then we will propose specific.
So what could we adjust in 2026 then? Will we adjust these numbers, the rates, or because the design will be set in tier, with 3 tiers. For that.
Well, except in
Base rates.
one respect. So you will have a chance before this rate design is applied to the 2026 rates to review the matter again. With the rate design, Concentric Energy Advisors actually recommended a possible phased-in approach for the commercial wastewater charges. So one thing you could consider at that time is should those charges be implemented all at once, or perhaps should they be implemented over a year or two, or even 3 years possibly. That'll be up to you based upon what the impact is. Concentric had a concern that actually with some of the low volume users on the commercial side, that there's really an inordinate rate impact. Now those users aren't paying that much for the water, but it's quite a big increase based upon the base charges, based on the meter size. So, but you'll have the chance at that point to really look at it again. But we're hoping that since both Concentric and your ALJ have recommended that these rate design principles are good, they're effective, they send the right messages to customers, they're based on cost of service, that you will approve those. But you still could modify, first of all, when they're implemented, what year, and to what extent there's any kind of a spreading out of the impact of the years.
Okay. Just because yesterday's meeting, we had those proposed rates. So based on if everything falls right for cost to reduce costs. And that includes the new borrowing mechanism, right? So based on those rates, and then that year 2025, 26, I think it was dropped down to 6%.
6%, yeah.
Right? So that 6% can be adjusted. Did that 6%?
We would still want an overall 6%, but how it gets allocated within the rate components themselves, that will be what we propose, and it can be adjudicated and you can design.
The 6% would be based on the
address it.
structure.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Miguel, under this rate design,
Thank you.
who's gonna give you the most increase at the end of the day? Assuming everything is good on the phase and, because anytime you're doing a rate design, because ultimately you're going to increase rates. So where is the biggest increase coming? Is it coming from residential or is it coming from commercial? Or is it coming from government? Where is the biggest, because ultimately you did this to increase rates.
No, that's not.
This is for rate design.
This is just to
This
rearrange.
is for cost of services. The rate increase is what that 5%, or 6%, 6%, 17%, 20%. Remember when you make 20%? So that 6% gets thrown into this design now. So whatever that is, I'm assuming you just increase across the board.
But you're doing some kind of shifting, you're doing something,
This is the rate
you're doing
design.
some kind of shifting. So where's the shift going?
The purpose, I don't know that I can answer your question directly, but the purpose of the original rate design structure that was part of the analytical study.
Why change the design? What was the purpose for the change in?
For cost of service probably.
To allow us to more, with future rate adjustments, to align more to cost of service. And then in response, remember this was done in 2021. I'm telling you, it was done in March of 2021 is when we submitted it. And then in May, we submitted the rate increase package, right? But the intent at that time was to, in addition to allowing us the ability to more align to cost of service, to allow us to increase or to achieve our rate revenue requirement without overly burdening the most vulnerable of the population, because it was tied to affordability. And so if the residential rates would have, at the time that we presented it, if you used under 5,000 gallons, you would see a decrease in your overall bill. And so it was designed to address the affordability issue during the pandemic recovery, and to also, on the non-residential rate customers, also provide some relief to the commercial rate classes that were most affected by tourism and the decline in the economy overall. So that was, if you go back to the analytical study, you'll see that that's part of the stated purpose. So it wasn't to increase rates, it was to allow us to achieve, at the time that it was presented in conjunction with our rate package, it was designed to achieve the revenue requirement without hurting the most vulnerable part of the residential customer base and not overtax the recovering commercial sector that was most affected by the decline in tourism. So that was the rationale behind it. If you go back to the analytical study, it's clearly stated.
Two words, rate school. This is a true learning rate school, because it's like, it is complicated like this. So at the end of the day, you have to like, cost of service is balancing out, based on usage, right? The more you use, the more burden it puts on the utility. So therefore, you should pay a little bit more because they have to fix it, versus the person spending only using 1,000 gallons is paying the same across the board currently on the base rate, right? It's like 32.14 across the board, whether you use 1 or 15,000, right? So this design is what you'll see on national levels and standards across the board, just to break up the cost of service so that it's fair to the person not using as much versus the company that is using a lot.
But isn't generally residential most costly portion of the cost of service that always gets subsidized?
Is it the most costly? Is that your question?
Isn't generally residential subsidized by the lower classes?
Yes,
That is my policy, yeah.
yeah, this still does that. That doesn't change. It's just more of the money is being shifted over to wastewater from water, and the larger the meter sizes are picking up more of the responsibility now too. The way this laid out with these numbers right now. And it will probably hold through 2 years from now. It's probably not going to change that much, but we'll have another chance to look at it then. See?
Yes, I think the logic behind it is fixed. And most residential houses are fixed income. Right? So that's what they're looking at versus a commercial business like a hotel. They can always adjust their pricing and their room rates to make up for that difference. So that's what the subsidy comes from. Because you can't increase your paycheck, just you're on fixed income.
If you're looking for a winner, and this, the way it's laid out, it's probably the smallest residential consumers. Yeah, they're getting a benefit of 16 to 21%.
Which I believe is your bill.
Doris, that's your bill, right? Times 2.
So Miguel, I have a question. On table 8, it shows residential water-only customers, and it shows that those who have a 3/4-inch pipe, their consumption from 1.8 to 5.8 will see increases of 1%, 3%, 4%. And then the 1-inch pipes, 1.5-inch pipes, they decrease from the 10 and 20% percentile, and then on the 30% percentile, it increases at 5%, but then negative 2% for 1.5. So the water-only customers, and I'm assuming that's the ones who are on the septic tank system, right? They don't use the wastewater system.
Correct.
So they don't benefit from this decrease with the combined water and wastewater decrease. So what is this attributed to? I remember something, is this volumetric and a change in the volumetric, or is this because of the 3-tier approach?
So the 3-tier approach is, the three tiers reflect volumetric charges for water, right? And so right now, there's only two tiers, right? And once you get above the break point between the two tiers, there's a large increase in the volumetric charge, right? Under the three tiers, there would be an intermediate block. So once you get past the first break point, the increase from the 350 to the 750 is not as big as it would be from 350 to 14 per 1,000 gallons. So that's the difference in the volumetric charge to the water-only customers. And so you're right, they're not, what we were talking about previously on the other table, the combined billing, yet then they're not seeing that same decrease. But if you look at for the for the 3/4 inch size, which is the typical residential meter size, right?
Right.
Your impact reduces between 6.8 thousand gallons per month, or gigallons per month rather, and beyond that. So if you're using the 5.8, you're not, and 3/4, and you have a 3/4 inch meter connection, you're really not seeing any change at all.
Right.
Okay.
So they'll see the increase, correct? They'll see an increase in this rate structure, correct? This rate design. The ones who fall from the 1.8 to the 4.8.
Most of it's mainly seen in that 4K gallon to 5K gallon range. That's where it's $30 to $41 more in the water-only residential customers.
And the concern I have is those who just use the water and then they're on the septic system, they have no choice because we don't have the wastewater system put in those areas, correct? Like there'll be areas in Jiva, areas in the villages that are on the septic tank system,
Right.
you know, wastewater septic system. So they will experience
A slight increase on the water side for anything above the first break point.
So, and back to Commissioner Brooks' question, is there a possibility, and I know you said this is based on the national or levels, right?
For basic health and sanitation, right?
Basic health and sanitation. Could there not be a tier for the 3 to 5? Could there not, I mean, could that not be part of the design as to our island and the uniqueness of the island? Could we not take a look at establishing a methodology for those that go from 3 to 5,000 gallons? Or the 3 tiers?
So right now, we go from 3 to 10 and then above 10.
3 to 10, yeah, so you go 3 to 10, and then about 10. But then if you go 3 to 5, and then 5 to 10, isn't that a possibility?
Of course, it's a possibility. We could add a fourth block. I don't know.
I mean, as a graduating amount, and we're talking about, you know, we're going through this transition, and of course, you know, now I'm seeing all this, having gone through the consent decree, you know, briefing and all. And, I mean, if we can, why don't we? Maybe that's what I'm asking, is if we can, why don't we? Because you go 0 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, and that's not, it would just be logical to me. Right? As a result of the impact, right? And then getting us into that consistent and bringing balance to consumption. Right? Because what we're saying is we have an overage in water that's been subsidizing wastewater. We want to make these changes so that we could bring consistency into consumption. What you use, you pay for. So if we're seeing water only is going to experience this increase, and, you know, there's those two categories again, while the others will get a decrease, how can we make it where there could be that gradual phase in? Because we're doing change, and we're addressing the needs, right? And to bring it to cost of service. So is that something that could be considered as well?
I think it could be considered. I think that the way the blocks have been structured, anybody under 10 is still seeing, anybody under 10 is still seeing a price break from what they currently have for anything above 5 to 10. So, you know, I don't know if there's much value in getting more granular and adding more blocks, because you still have the volumetric charge applicable within the block, which accounts for more or less based on how much you use. And I think the block structure, the value is in sending the signals that there is a recognition that the cheapest or the lowest price should be assigned to what you use for basic health and sanitation. But then what you use over that, for most households, will still be seeing a benefit in the lowering of the per kcal charge for that middle tier. And then if you are using way more than that, above the 10,000, then it sends the price signal that the more you use, the more you're going to pay. And so you should consider conservation. I think those are the types of price signals that these block structures are intended to. And you know, how those signals are effective or create increased value by being more granular, I'm not quite sure. I'm not the rate design expert, and I didn't write that analytical study, but I'm certain that in designing the blocks, they can, the charges within those blocks. The blocks themselves, I think, are consistent with similar block structures for utilities throughout the United States. But what may change is in areas where there is water scarcity, then you see the more you use those, you know, there are bigger jumps between the blocks for those reasons. I don't think those same conditions necessarily apply to Guam because we're not, you know, Western United States, but the overall concepts are the same, and the sending of the signals is kind of what drove the blocks. We're getting more granular on that by smaller blocks and adding more blocks. I don't know. I'd have to check to see what the value of that might be.
Miguel, where did this 3K as the basic health needed? Where did that 3K number come from?
It came from research and within the industry itself, based on affordability.
Is that nationwide?
Yes. The consultant that helped us design it.
What do they consider an average household?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. It depends on what you're.
100 gallons a day. It works out.
Sorry. The word average depends on the context in which you're looking at it. When you're talking to the US EPA, the average household is 7.5 thousand gallons per month. But that is for average usage for an average household. If you're talking about affordability, then it's the lowest quintile, so the top, or the lowest 20% the lowest 20% of median household income. That establishes, I think, the threshold or the benchmark for that basic health and sanitation level. It's based on, you know, national studies, and I would point out that the consultant who helped us wrote that report, is an author on a paper that was commissioned by NACWA, AWWA, and WEF, which are industry organizations in the water industry, on the topic of water affordability. So he's very familiar with all the
3K gallons just seems awfully low, especially here on Guam. I'm just speculating. I don't know what the average household, but Guam tends to be a larger family working indicators for the household tend to be larger. I don't know how many empty nesters there are, like, I don't know. I can think that we're a smaller slice of the residential population.
I will get the justifying data for you and provide it to you. We didn't pick it out of the air. There's a basis for it.
So then this rate structure is purposeful in the way it's structured to force conservation of the water, right?
That's one of the goals.
That's one of the goals. And then to bring about the balance of how we're charging fixed rates and volumetric rates for both water and wastewater. Correct?
Right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Fred.
Commissioner Perez Camacho, I wanted to try to address your question a little bit. If you created another block from 3,000 to 5,000, first of all, the reason it's being reduced to 3,000 is cost of service principles. It's been subsidized up to 5,000, but we're trying to get closer to cost of service so that customers actually pay the cost of the amount they used. So you kind of defeat that if you create another block which lowers the rate again. And the other problem is this whole rate design, it's trying to take basically 2 million out of water charges and put it over to wastewater. But that impact will be kind of nullified to some extent if you just create another subsidized class from 3 to 5. So the argument is we should try what we can to reduce subsidies and allow DWA to reduce, the water charge in order to fund the wastewater charge. There should be more of a balance, but you won't accomplish that if you just create another subsidy for the 3 to 5.
Just to reiterate that, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's just math. So since it's per kgal, right, and it's 350, the difference was currently it's at 5, right, 0 to 5, get like kgals, right, and that's what the proposed is 3. So if you look at the proposed structure, we're at 750 for tier 2. The difference at the current rates for tier 1 is about $3.99, let's say $4. So we're talking about an $8 increase for those that are in between that 3 to 5. Right? Right. And so it's just $8 more that they're paying. But they're also getting a $20 discount on the base rate on a 3/4 inch. So kind of offsets that. So that's what we're having another tier. It's just it's actually better off for them at this point. And we get to see the kind of block building later in the future to decide how it goes, right?
Yeah.
I think I was sure I'm gonna be in tier 2.
Just use more water.
I'll be in tier 2, because right now
Go ahead,
I'm in tier
Rowena.
1.
Yeah, one more question. If I recall, Larry had done a study on the aquifer and the health of the aquifer and the life of the aquifer. Has there been anything updated on that? Because I remember they were projecting, we're going to have problems within 10 years, or there's not going to be enough water. Has there been an updated study on that?
So WIRI produces an annual state of the aquifer report. So it's updated every year.
Okay.
For specific issues, as an example, they have done studies on nitrates in the aquifer, which relate to septic tanks, right, discharging and that percolating into the groundwater. That's an indication. The nitrates provides an indication of that. They have done studies occasionally, and those studies they're not every year, but they're when they have Massachusetts Canada chooses that as their topic to do a study, working with to request that they study certain aspects to help us manage the water resource and the purposes. They do periodic updates to those kinds of studies, but every year they do the state of the art report.
Well, the reason I ask is because we're going to be addressing it and how is that effluent, being discharged or not.
Yeah, so
Is that part of it?
part of to, we talked about the PFAS issues and the emerging contaminants and addressing those.
That's what is in effect if this is happening, right?
$2 million shift.
Oh, the water is at present by about 6.5%. So that water funding is actually paying for wastewater. So by shifting the two, you're not adversely affecting water.
Well, yeah, that was. So that goes back to your question about, people looking at water. Will see a decrease. Increase.
So I don't
Endorse this or power bill.
You're reading your power bill, Doris.
0035. Yeah, okay.
And then after that, it goes to $14.58. Under the proposed rates, it will be $7.50. The next year.
Because we'll be at 3,000 radius. It's very,
What's your gig out, you see?
well, right now,
Oh, under three.
Yeah.
Under three, you're fine. If you go over two,
well, that's not gonna happen for long.
if you go over 5, you still be positive $12.
If you might still go to 6 or 7, you're gonna go over.
Okay, so,
Well, twice a month.
so Fred, could you recap, given this is approved, this approved principle, and PUC this again, we said,
Yes.
when 5-year
So, as BL indicated, these principles will not be implemented 24 or 2026. Before they can be implemented, this will come back to the commission. You will know at that time what the rates are by 2026. And the PUC will ask you to FY 2026 rate in FY 2026. Based upon that, I mean, the hope is if you in 2026, you not only question the principles for that point, well, for wastewater, or if you feel too hot, so they should be implemented in that. And also,
Yeah. Regardless, people, somebody, 6% has to come from all of us.
Right.
right,
Based on costs. How we discount this. Closer.
So going back to my other question, the 2 million for shifting from water to wastewater, which class of customer is going to absorb most of this billion?
I'll take a step.
Go ahead, Fred.
It seems like on the wastewater side, residential water use, I think it's something like, what's your total, Miguel, for residential users?
For the wastewater,
water. Or one. Joe, you have something to say?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to second yet. I have
Yeah, go
a
ahead.
Okay, we are back. I'm so sorry we're having issues with our internet.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, I have a question for Concentric. As far as basic health and sanitation levels being set at 3,000 kgals, is there any areas in the country that set a higher ceiling for 5,000 kgals?
I mean, from a basic sort of human needs, like 3,000 is the number I've seen uh, in other areas too. But I am aware of utilities where the first block is set higher than 3,000. Sorry, did you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so you said there is an area that set a higher ceiling. And what is the reasoning?
Um, well, I have seen instances without necessarily, I don't know the actual reasoning, but 3,000 is generally considered the basic health and sanitary needs in the US.
And then as far as, is it one area that you know that's above 3,000 or is there several areas?
Well, I mean, some utilities still have a flat, right? So it depends. So some utilities don't even have a tiered structure. So you could have just a flat, like per kgal rate. So it really depends.
If I can just add to that, in the analytical study on page 23, it does, the statement, the reduced lifeline threshold. The report does state, our report does state that the proposed 3,000 gallon per month usage level for the tier 1 rate is aligned to estimates of requirements to meet basic health and sanitary needs for 4-person households. That's under the section titled Residential Rate Design on page 23 of the analytical study.
There's a motion, but they're waiting for someone to second. There's a motion on the floor. Speak to the mic.
Because after that level of freedom to 5,000 could be a population issue or per capita issue.
WHO's figures are quite a bit lower, actually. But, I mean, they're looking at a lot of communities that are a hard time getting safe drinking water in total. But they're down to 7.5 to 15 liters per day per person. Roughly. WHO's recommendations for water in a household.
Just for like trees.
Yeah, it's quite significant. Okay. Mr. Montanola has made clear his motion is still on the table. Is there a second to that motion? Or is there another motion? Fred, within our power at a later date to alter this at some juncture, isn't it? Here you go.
You're the commissioner.
Right.
Again, Fred, to add to that question, later down the road, data that it should be 0.5 gigal instead of 1 to 3, 3.5 or 4 gigal at a first tier, we can alter it down the line. Okay.
How's the race to see what's next step?
Yeah, that could be put in the order,
Yeah, this is part of
or it's just part of the structure.
Within our authority.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, that way you can see a mock bill too.
but we have the option now, that's good. So we need to get the.
It's like a first step forward.
Yeah.
Now we can see the mock breaks and we can see how they're done. But this is the first step to creating a tier. Okay. That's it.
Yeah.
Could we ask, I guess the next time, DWA wants, trying to look at that floor,
Yeah,
put that in your order,
of course, Doris,
to have a floor.
Yeah,
excuse me, Joe is, he's got the floor.
Or, no, it's along your line because it's that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm ready to second the motion.
Thank you, Joe. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Doris?
Easy Doris. We can change it.
Doris said a very soft aye. So the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Ecocentric.
We always have the option. Yeah, thank you, Concentric. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item of business is GSWA docket 2403, petition to increase funding for temporary staffing services contract with Pacific Human Resource Services, Inc. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Fred?
Okay, Mr. Chair, City Commissioner Brooks is taking a break.
Oh, that's not allowed. She can take a break, but you can't, Fred.
You're the chairman and the rules are reviewed.
Go ahead. We'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you. think we can carry on. Thank you.
Chairman, Commissioners. So this is the application of the Guam Solid Waste Authority to increase funding for the temporary staffing services contract with Pacific Human Resource Services, Inc., PHRS. And the history of this was on November 29, 2022, the PUC approved an award and contract between GSWA and PHRS for temporary staffing services. The term of the contract was from October 1, 2022 through September 30, 2025. The PUC approved the total contract fund of $2,002,000 allocated over 3 years. Year one, which was FY 2023, was $1.1 million. Year two, FY 2024, was $451,000, and year three, FY 2025, was also $451,000. But what happened is that due to unforeseen circumstances, operational challenges and increased demands for temporary employees, specifically equipment operators and sanitation workers, PSWA anticipates exceeding the approved amount for year two and year three by the total amount of $768,701. And that's $539,701 for year two and $229,000 for year three. The GSWA board has approved the application here to increase the funding for the PHRS contract by $539,701 for year two, and for year three, $229,000. Again, for a total increase, $768,701. Now, under the contract review protocol, when an agency exceeds the approved amount by the PUC by 10%, they must come to PUC for approval of the additional amount. And original contract, $202 million, the increase, $768,701. I figure that's roughly a 38% increase.
Okay.
GSWA
So we'll just
does
wait
have
till
to
it shows up. It's not here yet.
Now, GSWA has offered an explanation and justification for this additional funding for temporary staffing. The original amounts that were included in 2022 for the PHR contract were based on an assumption that there would be 2 equipment operators and 6 sanitation workers in both years 2, 2024, and years 3, 2025. So the $451,000 was based on funding. And GSWA prepared a nice chart that I think really lays out the additional. Right now, from October 1, 2023 to April 1, 2024,
617.
there have been 18 temporary employees. 18. The original estimate was for 8. 6 equipment